The last stronghold of rebel and terror groups in Syria, the northern province of Idlib, is right now surrounded by the Syrian army. With a decisive battle looming, civilians are fleeing the area through humanitarian corridors set up by the Syrian government and Russia.
The militants were holding us as hostages. It was cold in our camp in winter and deadly hot in summer. This humanitarian corridor is our salvation.
I am from Idlib. Conditions were dire there. The militants don't let anyone go. We escaped with just the clothes on our backs.
The
main illnesses here are respiratory infections, gastric distress, and arthritis. We give people medicine, recommendations, and refer them to hospital if necessary.
Controlling Idlib is militant group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, formerly known as al-Nusra or as al-Qaeda in Syria. The group is viewed by Russia and America as a terrorist organization and has carried out a number of atrocities. The group's chief has warned all other factions against taking part in any talks with Damascus.
Our weapons are the source of our strength and honor. Thinking about surrendering to the enemy and handing over weapons will be considered treason.
The Syrian army, meanwhile, is sending reinforcements to Idlib, such as tanks, artillery and other military equipment. Officers say their troops are ready for the final battle against militants, but as of right now, they are waiting for the order. And as tensions mount in Idlib, the Russian Center for Syrian Reconciliation says it's received intelligence on the delivery of toxic substances to the province with the help of the White Helmets to later be used in staging a false flag attack. Russia has previously warned that militants are preparing to stage a chemical attack. The issue has been the subject of heated debate at the UN Security Council.
Syrian armed forces have no chemical weapons and no plans to use them. There is no military necessity for it. We've said this many times before.
It is not enough for the Russians to assert that the Syrians have no chemical weapons. There are very many inaccuracies and inconsistencies.
Sensible people will not use militarily useless means to draw the fire of three powerful countries upon themselves.
We have no information about chlorine being delivered, and therefore, if the Russian ministry does have that, the most probable explanation is that it is a preemptive attempt to set the agenda and the narrative for an appalling attack to come.
We consider it as an invitation to the armed rebel groups to stage another chemical attacks as they did it in Eastern Ghouta, Duma.
It's very clear to us and our partners that this is an effort to distract from an imminent attack on Idlib.
RT's Murad Gazdiev has more on how the involvement of the international community in the Syrian war has made the potential escalation an extremely risky scenario.
Idlib is shaping up to be the end, a last showdown between jihadists and the Syrian army. It is the last remaining stronghold of Islamists and rebels. What's worse is the foreign power buildup in the region. Out of the blue, US cruise missile delivery systems, guided missile destroyers, strategic bombers are rebasing and dropping anchor near Syria, days after the US and its allies warned they'd take action if chemical weapons are used by Assad.
As we have demonstrated, we will respond appropriately to any further use of chemical weapons by the Syrian regime.
And Russia, which is beefing up its own presence, warns that it's the Islamists that are planning just that.
The US continues to expand its presence of cruise missile carriers in the Middle East, which is connected to the preparations for another false flag incident, allegedly involving chemical weapons.
Russian reports of a US military build-up in the Eastern Med are nothing more than propaganda. It's not true. That does not mean, however, that we're unprepared to respond should the president direct such an action.
The United States denies building up its forces, but says it's ready to attack Syria if need be. The good news is that Russia and the United States are also apparently in talks to prevent any potential use of chemical weapons. But the danger remains, the worst-case scenario, an international escalation. Militarily, the rebels stand little chance against the Syrian army. What could save them is a foreign intervention caused by, for example, a staged chemical attack. That is what happened last time, say the Russians. A staged incident in Ghouta that led to a US, French and British cruise missile barrage against Syria. This time, what with the military buildup, the stakes and risks of an escalation will be much higher. But it hasn't begun yet. There will be a big conference on Friday, but chances of a peaceful resolution look slim. The Russian Reconciliation Center has been trying to broker a deal, but the jihadists remain defiant. Worst of all is that there are as many as 2 million civilians in Idlib, trapped between jihadists and the Syrian army. If talks fall through, if chemical weapons are used, if this battle drags on, civilian casualties will soar, not to mention the danger of an international escalation.
An escalation is imminent. How that develops, we don't know. Whether it goes very fierce, in the form of a very fierce confrontation between Jabhat al-Nusra on one side and its allies, and the Syrian army and its allies on the other side. We don't know. We hope that it goes as it went in other areas, like most recently in Daraa in southern Syria, where faction leaders understand that this is a force that they cannot compete with or fight effectively, and they save their people and their cities a lot of destruction and death. So in that case, people could go back to under government control as soon as possible, and to normality basically as soon as possible. And we understand that many of them are hoping to achieve such a feat.